Number 15. Mount Everest Mystery. Who was the first person to scale Mount Everest? If you answered Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing Norgay, then you might be right. Most who subscribe to the popular understanding credit these men as the first to make the record-breaking climb. But many question if the two actually were the first to reach the summit. The tale of George Mallory and Andrew Sandy Irvine hangs over the history of Everest in a snow-capped riddle. Did these two intrepid British climbers conquer the world's highest peak in 1924, nearly 3 decades before the official first ascent? Or did they perish in the attempt, so close to the summit that they could taste it? On June 8, 1924, Mallory and Irvine were last seen by their fellow climbers, a mere 800 feet from Everest's summit. They were climbing into a veil of clouds, and then nothing. They vanished without a trace. The world held its breath, hoping for their triumphant return, but days passed, and then weeks. The mountain buried any evidence of the men's next steps under layers of snow. It wasn't until 1999, 75 years after their disappearance, that Mallory's body was finally discovered. His frozen remains offered hope that the mystery might at last be solved. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. The camera that Mallory had carried, which might have contained photographic evidence of their success, was nowhere to be found. Irvine's body has yet to be recovered. As the 100th anniversary of their disappearance approaches, one man believes he has finally unraveled the mystery that has captivated the world for so long. Author Graham Hoyland, a distant relative of another member of Mallory's expedition, has spent years poring over the evidence, including the oft-overlooked weather reports from the day of their disappearance. Hoyland's investigation led him to a chilling conclusion. He discovered that on June 8, 1924, the barometric pressure recorded at the base camp had dropped significantly. Noted by Somerville, another climber on the expedition, this seemingly small change in air pressure may have had catastrophic consequences for the ill-fated climbers. A drop in barometric pressure at such extreme altitudes effectively makes it even more difficult to breathe in the already thin air. It creates what Hoyland calls an invisible death trap. Mallory and Irvine could not have known that the mountain was growing more dangerous with every step. The storm they walked into wasn't just a blizzard. It was a phenomenon known as a snowball. Aptly named, this event is characterized by plunging temperatures and howling winds. Hoyland had experienced similar conditions on Everest and described it as gasping for breath in a nightmare. Mallory and Irvine wore layers of silk, cotton, and wool, clothing that was protective, but no match for the sudden, brutal cold. These clothes were unlikely to provide sufficient warmth to survive a snow bomb, let alone an overnight battle with the snow on the mountain. For years, many have clung to the hope that Mallory and Irvine reached the summit before they died. Hoyland himself once wanted to believe this, driven by a desire to prove that Mallory had been the first to conquer Everest. But the facts as he now sees them point to the grim conclusion that the weather, the lack of oxygen, and the deadly storm all conspired against the two climbers' success. Driven by his obsession with Everest, Mallory may have believed he could overcome any obstacle. But the mountain had other plans. It claimed him and Irvine, creating a mystery that would captivate generations of climbers and historians. As Hoyland reflects on the adventurer's fate, he acknowledges the fatal allure of Everest, writing, "Mallory was possessed by Everest, and it killed him." Today, Everest is a different place. With some 500 climbers reaching the summit each year, the mountain has lost some of its mystery. Hoyland muses that the best thing that could happen would be for the top 800 feet to fall away, taking with it the fevered dreams of glory that have claimed so many lives, including those of Mallory and Irvine. Number 14. Nazca Lines. A small plane flew over the arid expanses of southern Peru. The barren desert below was like a blank canvas, an endless stretch of rust red and tan, broken up by the occasional rock or dry shrub. But then, something remarkable came into view. Pale lines, impossibly straight, emerged from the desert floor like veins on a leaf. They twisted and turned, gradually taking on recognizable forms, geometric shapes, animals, even what appeared to be a giant bird. These are the Nazca Lines, a mysterious collection of geoglyphs etched into the desert that have baffled scientists and explorers for over 90 years. Spread across a 310 square mile area near the town of Nazca, over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric patterns, and 70 intricate depictions of animals and plants seem to defy explanation. Who created them, and for what purpose? And why here, in one of the driest places on Earth? The first recorded discovery of the lines came in 1926, when Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Zesp stumbled upon them. But it wasn't until the 1930s, when commercial flights began crossing over the region, that the full extent of the Nazca Lines was realized. From the air, the patterns were unmistakable and their scale breathtaking. Among the most iconic were the hummingbird, the spider, and the monkey, some stretching over 1,000 feet in length. Theories about the purpose of the lines have evolved. Early on, American professor Paul Kozik proposed that they were part of an elaborate astronomical calendar, pointing towards celestial events like solstices. His theory gained traction after he observed the sunset aligning perfectly with one of the lines on the winter solstice of 1941. Kozik famously dubbed the Nazca Desert the largest astronomy book in the world. Yet, as time passed, doubts were cast about the astronomical theory. In the 1970s, researchers challenged the idea that the lines were solely a star chart. Among them was Johann Reinhard, a National Geographic explorer-in-residence, who argued that the lines were more likely tied to the ancient Nazca people's desperate need for water in this parched landscape. He suggested that the lines led to places where rituals were performed, hoping to invoke the gods' favor for rain and fertility. This theory was anchored by the fact that many of the biomorphs had strong ties to water symbolism in ancient Andean cultures. Spiders were associated with rain, hummingbirds with fertility, and monkeys hailed from the water-rich Amazon. Despite these insights, the true purpose of the Nazca Lines remains a mystery. Were they an ancient plea for rain, a celestial map, or perhaps something else entirely? As new technologies emerge, researchers continue to piece together the puzzle. But like the sea, the desert keeps its secrets under wraps. Number 13. Copper Scroll Treasure. The year was 1952, and an archaeological expedition was carefully exploring the hidden chambers of Qumran, where they had already unearthed a series of extraordinary scrolls. But as the archaeologists ventured deeper into the uncharted passages of Cave 3, they stumbled upon something that made them reconsider everything they had found before. Nestled in a niche, apart from the other artifacts, were two strange, tightly wound scrolls. Unlike others they had found, these were not made of leather or papyrus. They were sheets of pure copper, oxidized and brittle from centuries of being buried in the cave. Although not fully understanding what they had discovered, the team of scholars was certain that it was something unprecedented. Among the team was K.G. Kuhn, a German scholar who realized the significance of the scrolls. The faint embossed letters told a story unlike any other found in Qumran, a story of hidden treasure. As Kuhn deciphered the text, excitement escalated. The scrolls detailed the locations of vast caches of gold and silver, tucked away across the region. The Copper Scroll, as it came to be known, was a treasure map. But unraveling the mysteries of the Copper Scroll was no simple task. The copper was too fragile to be unrolled without crumbling into pieces, and the standard techniques for handling ancient leather scrolls were useless here. The scrolls were carefully transported to the Manchester College of Technology in England, where Professor H. Wright Baker devised a plan. With careful precision, he cut the scroll into 23 sections, revealing the full text for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. The photographs taken of the scroll were grainy and difficult to interpret, but the content soon came to light. The scroll contained 64 locations where immense riches were supposedly hidden, quantities so large that they had to be mythical. Yet some scholars, like Kuhn, believed these treasures were real, perhaps belonging to the temple in Jerusalem or another significant institution of the time. Others were more skeptical, seeing the scroll as a product of ancient imagination. Amidst the academic debate, John Allegro, one of the scholars involved, could not resist the lure of a real-life treasure hunt. Without waiting for the official publication, he released his own edition of the scroll's text and set off for the West Bank, determined to unearth the hidden fortune. His actions caused a scandal in the scholarly community, yet they also fueled the growing legend of the Copper Scroll. In the decades to come, scholars continued to debate the scroll's origins and the reality of the treasures it described. Some believed the scroll was an independent artifact, unconnected to other Qumran scrolls. Others argued that it safeguarded treasures hidden by the temple priests, fleeing the Roman destruction of Jerusalem. As time wore on, the scroll itself began to deteriorate, particularly along the cuts made during its opening. Conservation efforts have been launched to preserve what remains, but the true draw of the scroll is hidden somewhere in the earth, the treasure still waiting to be discovered. Number 12. Olmec Heads. Explorers made their way through a dense jungle off the Mexican Gulf Coast. Their destination was an ancient land, long forgotten, yet teeming with the little-known history of a once mighty civilization. The Aztecs and the Mayans have often stolen the spotlight in Mexican lore, but the truth was that another strong people had walked these lands long before. They were known as the Olmecs, a civilization lost to time, save for a few remnants that hinted to the modern world of their existence. The explorers had heard the stories passed down through generations, stories of colossal stone heads buried deep within the jungle. These heads were said to be the last tangible evidence left of the Olmecs, who had flourished between 1200 and 400 BC. Little was known about them, except that they were a sophisticated people, possibly with a class structure and an understanding of engineering that rivaled even the later civilizations that would come to dominate Mesoamerica. But the most puzzling remnants of their existence were these mysterious basalt carvings, the colossal heads of the Olmecs. The first of these heads had been discovered over a century earlier, in 1862, by a curious oil prospector named Jose Melgar. He had stumbled upon an enormous stone head in Tabasco. Its massive but impassive face stared out from the jungle as if it had been waiting for centuries to be found in the world's longest game of hide-and-seek. Yet it wasn't until 1938 that archaeologist Matthew Sterling officially uncovered the head at Tres Zapotes, and the world began to take notice. The explorers finally reached a clearing where the first of these heads towered before them, half buried in the earth. The sight was mesmerizing. The head stood over 10 feet tall, its lifelike features carved with skill that seemed impossible for a civilization so ancient. The basalt was not native to the area, and the nearest source of such stone was over 70 kilometers away in the Tuxtla Sierra Mountains. How had the Olmecs transported these massive stones across such a distance? Theories abounded, from wooden rollers to lost technologies, but none could fully explain the feat. As the explorers circled the head, they marveled at the distinctive facial features carved into the stone. Some suggested these faces bore African characteristics, sparking debate over the origins of the Olmecs. But the most accepted theory was that these heads represented the powerful rulers of the Olmec civilization. All 17 of the colossal heads, scattered across various sites, remain a gateway into the near-forgotten world of the Olmecs, a civilization whose secrets are well kept in the silence of their stone mouths. Number 11. Roald Amundsen. As we've seen many a time already on this list, the seas hold secrets, and the Barents Sea holds a big one. For more than 80 years, the ultimate fate of legendary Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen and his ill-fated flight into the Arctic is one of the mysteries still lying in its depths. Roald Amundsen was no run-of-the-mill Columbus type. He was one of the titans of the heroic age of polar exploration. His daring expeditions to both the North and South Poles are the stuff of legend. In 1905, he led the first successful navigation of the treacherous Northwest Passage, a feat that countless explorers had unsuccessfully attempted before him, often at the cost of their lives. Then, in 1911, when he learned that the North Pole had already been claimed by Robert Peary, Amundsen turned his sights southward. He and his team became the first to reach the South Pole, braving the brutal Antarctic conditions to claim their place in history. Amundsen's career was marked by triumph after triumph, including a daring dirigible flight over the North Pole with American explorer Lincoln Ellsworth and Italian engineer Umberto Nobile in 1926. Yet this victory was followed by a bitter public feud with Nobile, which would add a dramatic twist to Amundsen's final mission. In May 1928, news broke that Nobile's airship, the Italia, had crashed on the ice north of Spitsbergen. Despite their differences, Amundsen leapt into action. He joined the multinational rescue effort, boarding a French Latham 47 seaplane in Tromsø, Norway. As the plane soared into the Arctic skies, it vanished, swallowed by the dense fog and turbulent waters of the Barents Sea. In 2009, New Zealand explorer Rob McCallum and his dedicated team hoped to launch their own mission to find the remains of Amundsen's plane. They embarked on a daring 2-week expedition, equipped with cutting-edge technology and the determination to finally locate Amundsen's lost aircraft. The search was concentrated on a small remote area, roughly 20 miles northwest of Bear Island, where the French twin-engine flying boat was believed to have gone down. Yet despite their best efforts and the deployment of sophisticated sonar, an autonomous underwater vehicle, and 2 underwater robots, the ocean yielded no results. The Latham 47's final resting place remained elusive as ever. Though the expedition had not delivered the answers they sought, McCallum speculated that the plane might lie outside of the 35 square miles of ocean they'd examined, or perhaps over the decades, it may have been lost to the grind of industrial fishing activity. Some square mileage had been ruled out, but for all those who had been captivated by the mystery of Amundsen's final journey, the disappointment was beyond measure. The only remains ever recovered of Amundsen and his crew were afloat from the seaplane and other debris shortly after his disappearance, but they were not enough to provide meaningful answers. The rescue mission for Nobile was partially successful. He and 7 others were saved, but 8 of his crew perished. As for Amundsen, his fate was bleaker, and his disappearance remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of polar exploration. Number 10. Plain of Jars. In a remote corner of Laos, thousands of stone jars, some as tall as a person, stand silently in the open. Carved from solid rock, these ancient urns have guarded their secret origins for over 2,500 years. Laos holds many hidden treasures, yet few are as perplexing as the Plain of Jars. What were these jars intended for? Who made them? And why? Archaeologists have pondered these questions for decades. In the early 1930s, a French geologist named Madeleine Colony proposed that the jars and a nearby cave, where human bones and teeth were found, were part of ancient funeral rites. Her theory was met with skepticism by the local population, who believed the jars were crafted using more mundane methods than would have been used in these rituals. They believed they are crafted from animal skins, dung, and clay, baked into their final form. In this vein, others believe the jars were used as burial vessels by an ancient civilization that traversed a long-forgotten trade route between the Mekong River and the Gulf of Tonkin. The theory goes that bodies were placed inside the jars, left to decompose before being moved to a final resting place. The evidence of human bones, stone lids, and discs nearby lends some credence to this idea. But not everyone is convinced. Local legends speak of more fantastical origins. Some say the jars were crafted by giants who once roamed the mountains, using the massive stone vessels to brew strong rice wine in celebration of a great victory. Others say that the jars held whiskey for a giant who lived in the hills, his thirst as oversized as the jars themselves. Giants aside, some chipped and broken jars bear the scars of a darker chapter in history. During the Vietnam War, this region became the world's most heavily bombed place per capita and remained a dumping ground for millions of unexploded cluster bombs. White and red markers warn of the unseen dangers still below. Though conflict has shattered the peace of this ancient land, it has not destroyed its rich history, nor has it destroyed this dark mystery. Number 9. Lost Peking Man bones. The 1940s were rocked by the Second World War raging across country lines, but another discovery rocked the world of paleontology. It was the winter of 1941, just days before the Pearl Harbor, when a set of invaluable fossils vanished without a trace in China. These were no ordinary bones. They were the fossilized evidence of the Peking Man, a Homo erectus that roamed the Earth nearly 500,000 years ago. Their disappearance sparked an immediate manhunt for the Peking Man fossils. But this ancient man's story begins long before the war. In the 1920s, when paleontologists excavated the Zucudian cave system, known locally as Dragon Bone Hill, just southwest of Beijing, they uncovered teeth and bones that hinted at a previously unknown branch of the human tree in the caves. Canadian anthropologist Davidson Black proposed that these fossils belonged to a new species. Throughout the 1930s, as tensions in the region simmered, the Zucudian site yielded even more fossils. Black passed away in 1934, but his work was carried on by German anthropologist Franz Weidenreich. Under his watch, the collection of Peking Man fossils grew, and each new find was an exhilarating discovery. But as Japan's invasion of China began, the safety of this priceless collection became a major concern. Aware of the potential loss, the Chinese government made a fateful decision. They would entrust the fossils to the United States, who would safeguard them from the chaos of the war. And so, in December 1941, the fossils were carefully packed into boxes and prepared for their journey. The fossils would be handed over to U.S. Marines stationed in China, who would then transport them to safety. But things didn't go as planned. The boxes never reached their planned destination, and the fossils vanished just like that. What happened to those bones? Some speculate that Japanese soldiers intercepted the shipment, smuggling the fossils back to their home base. Others believe that the bones were lost at sea, along with the ship that carried them. Still others wonder if the fossils made it to the United States, their existence known to only a few. The search for the missing fossils became a global obsession. Researchers scoured archives, interviewed witnesses, and followed every lead, no matter how tenuous. Yet the Peking Man fossils were nowhere to be found. Still, hope was not entirely lost. Before their disappearance, Weidenreich had the foresight to create detailed casts of the fossils, preserving their likeness for future generations. And in 1949, the excavations at Zucudian resumed, yielding new discoveries that continued to illuminate the lives of our ancestors known as Peking Man. The legacy of those original fossils lived on. 70 years later, the missing Peking Man fossils still haunt the world of paleontology. They may be buried beneath a parking lot in China. They may lie at the bottom of the ocean. Or perhaps they rest in a place forgotten, waiting to be rediscovered. Number 8. The Great Unconformity. On first sight, the Grand Canyon is awe-inspiring. But within its walls of rock, an even more fascinating story is told, each layer a page in the ancient history of the Earth's geology. And geologist John Wesley Powell hoped to read the entire book. He stood at the edge of the canyon in 1869, gazing at the vast expanse of stone before him. To the untrained eye, the canyon was simply a natural marvel, but Powell saw much more hidden deep within the rock. As he studied the layers, he noticed something unusual. The rocks at the base of the canyon were ancient, dating back 1.4 to 1.8 billion years. But the layers directly above them were far younger, a mere 520 million years old. It was as if a billion years of Earth's history had vanished without a trace. The missing pages. This gap in the geological record became known as the Great Unconformity, and it became a mystery that would mystify geologists for generations. Powell's discovery was only the beginning. As other geologists began exploring sites across North America and beyond, they found the same inexplicable gaps in rock layers. In many places, up to 1 billion years of Earth's history appeared to be missing, as if time itself had been erased. The question that came up time and time again was what had happened during that lost epoch. For years, theories unfurled. One of the most compelling was the idea of Snowball Earth, a time when the planet's surface froze from pole to pole. According to this theory, massive glaciers that covered the Earth's surface ground the rock away and swept it into the oceans. It was a plausible explanation, and for a while it seemed like the mystery was solved. But like any good book, the Earth's had a plot twist. In 2020, a team of geologists studying the rocks at Pikes Peak, Colorado, discovered that the unconformity there was not caused by Snowball Earth at all. Instead, it seemed that the older rock had been exposed and eroded away by processes unrelated to global glaciation. This meant that if the unconformities around the world were not caused by a single event, then the Great Unconformity might be more complicated than anyone had imagined. The new theory suggested that the breakup of the supercontinent Rodinia 700 to 800 million years ago might have played a role in the North American unconformity. As the continent split apart, older rocks were brought to the surface, while newer rocks were washed away into the oceans. It was a reasonable explanation, but it only added to the growing sense of loss, as that would mean more than 1 billion years have disappeared in what would have been a particularly interesting time in Earth's development. Despite this new compelling theory, the mystery of the Great Unconformity endures. And with whole chapters of geological history perhaps lost to the ocean, it may never be solved. Number 7. English sweating sickness. It was the end of the 15th century. Global warming had not escalated to its current levels, so why were so many people sweating? It was a summer unlike any other in 1485, as a strange and terrifying affliction descended upon England. The disease came suddenly, without warning, and swept through the land, taking many at random with it. No one knew where it had come from or how to stop it. All that was certain was the terror it brought. The first signs were subtle but deceptive: a shiver, a slight dizziness, a headache. But within hours, these small discomforts would grow exponentially. Victims would be afflicted with drenching sweats to the point of trembling. They would burn with fever and gasp for breath. Their pulse would race, their mind would grow delirious, and for many, death would come calling within hours of the first symptoms. The disease struck without mercy or prejudice. The wealthy and powerful fell just as easily as the poor, the young and healthy as easily as the old and frail. The lively streets of London became eerie and silent, save for the cries of the dying and those who mourned them. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the sweating sickness vanished, but not for good. In 1508 it returned, angrier than before, and again nearly a decade later in 1517, each time claiming more lives and spreading more fear. By the time the fourth epidemic struck in 1528, the disease had crossed the borders of England, spreading into Europe. From Hamburg, it traveled north to Scandinavia, east to Lithuania, Poland, and Russia, and into the Netherlands. Traveling from city to city, the disease left a trail of bodies in its wake. Though it was learning new languages, its symptoms were always the same: rigors, headaches, and severe exhaustion, followed by that dreaded soaking sweat. Those who were fortunate enough to survive the first 24 hours often made a full recovery, but the disease showed no mercy to its victims. And even those who survived were not safe from future attacks, as immunity was fleeting, if it existed at all. The great British physician John Caius, who witnessed the horror firsthand during the outbreak of 1551 in Shrewsbury, documented the disease's progression, offering what little advice he could to those who sought it. Caius believed the sickness was born of filth and dirt, spread perhaps by insects that thrived in the summer heat. But the true source of the sweating sickness remained a mystery, and its transient nature didn't help suss out its origins. Some thought it might have been a form of relapsing fever, carried by lice and ticks, or something more exotic like hantavirus. By the time the disease disappeared for good, it had claimed thousands of lives and made a permanent impression on the collective memory of England. Number 6. Taunus Heracleum. Off the coast of Egypt lies a city long forgotten by the world above. This is a place where time has stood still and ancient secrets lie. Once the largest port city in Egypt on the Mediterranean Sea, Tanis Heraklion had been lost to the ocean's depths for over a millennium. Over the centuries, it became a thing of legend. Some wondered if the city ever existed. Like the lost city of Atlantis, could Tanis Heraklion be a work of fiction? However, it was in fact real. Sometime before 1933, an RAF commander flew over the area and spotted ruins in the water. And only more recently, in the year 2000, did the city resurface in the larger human consciousness, thanks to the efforts of Frank Gaudio and his team of underwater archaeologists. For months, they combed through the ruins of the sunken city, their efforts rewarded with the discovery of a colossal ancient temple, dedicated to the god Amun, where the pharaohs once sought divine sanction for their rule. The remnants of the temple lay scattered across the seabed, along with massive stone blocks that once formed the heart of the city. Buried beneath sediment and silt, Gaudio's team also unearthed treasures that had once been held within the temple's treasury. Among them were silver ritual instruments, gold jewelry, and alabaster containers used to hold precious perfumes and ointments used in ancient rituals. The discovery was valuable not only due to the unearthing of the holy sites and the objects found within. It was about understanding the city itself, a place where cultures mingled and history unfolded. Tanis Heraklion had been a bustling hub long before Alexandria rose to prominence. Dating back to the 5th century BCE, the city's foundations were a marvel of ancient engineering. Tanis Heraklion's power was strengthened by the might of its gods and the wealth of its traders. And the ancient Egyptians were not the only ones to leave their mark on this city. As the archaeologists dug deeper, they stumbled upon the remnants of a Greek sanctuary devoted to Aphrodite. Bronze and ceramic objects suggested Greek settlers had once called this place home. Greek weapons were found, indicating mercenaries had defended the city's borders. The find suggested that Tanis Heraklion was not merely a city. It was a crossroads where Egyptians and Greeks coexisted, traded, and worshipped. The Greeks were allowed to settle and trade in the city during the Sate dynasty and had left their mark on the city's history. But Tanis Heraklion was not immortal. Once the jewel of the Nile, the city was eventually eclipsed by the rise of Alexandria. The sea eventually claimed Tanis Heraklion, eliminating it from the maps of men until today. Natural disasters, including earthquakes, tsunamis, and rising sea levels over time, saw the city sink to the depths of the ocean. By the 2nd century BCE, Tanis Heraklion's decline had begun, and by the 8th century AD, it had vanished entirely beneath the water. Yet Tanis Heraklion's submersion became its preservation. For over 1,000 years, the city lay untouched beneath the waves, protected from looters and the ravages of time. Now, as Gaudio and his team continue their work, they know that the city has more stories to tell. With each dive, the tale of the lost world of Tanis Heraklion is told, chapter by chapter. Number 5. Ark of the Covenant. Said to have been crafted over 3,000 years ago by the Israelites, the Ark of the Covenant is a sacred relic described as a golden chest, about the size of a seaman's chest from the 19th century. But the Ark was believed to be more than a mere container. Topped with 2 majestic golden cherubim, some say it houses the stone tablets bearing the 10 Commandments, along with Aaron's staff and manna from heaven given to the Israelites by God. Legends spoke of the power of the items contained within the Ark, claiming they had cleared obstacles and deadly creatures from the path the Israelites had taken during the 40 years they wandered the desert after leaving Egypt. The Bible recounted how when they crossed the Jordan River, the waters parted as soon as the Ark touched the river's edge, granting them safe passage across. The walls of Jericho too have fallen at the Ark's command, as reverberations of trumpet blasts sang out God's divine will. Yet in the chaos of 597 and 586 BC, when the Babylonian Empire swept through Jerusalem, the Ark vanished. At the time, it was housed in the temple, but with the city's fall, it disappeared from historical records. Some theories suggested it was destroyed, others that it was captured or hidden away for safekeeping. One favored theory held that the Ark had been rushed away to Ethiopia before the Babylonians breached the city walls. According to this tale, the Ark rested in the Church of St. Mary of Zion in Axum. The church's authorities, however, have remained tight-lipped, allowing only a single guardian to view the relic, and barring any form of scientific examination. Another theory proposed that the Ark was hidden in a network of underground passages beneath the First Temple. But with the Dome of the Rock now occupying the site, any attempt to search beneath it was impossible, as the area is sacred to Islam and off-limits to archaeologists. As archaeologists immerse themselves in these theories, perhaps the cinematic portrayal of the Ark in the 1981 film Raiders of the Lost Ark tells the truth. In that case, the Ark is in the capable hands of Indiana Jones, legendary archaeologist. Number 4. Cleopatra's Tomb. One of the most famous pharaohs in Egyptian history is at the heart of one of the world's most enigmatic mysteries. The lover of Julius Caesar, the wife of Mark Antony, and a ruler who wielded unmatched power, Cleopatra, the last queen of ancient Egypt, remains a captivating figure, prompting images of grandeur and allure. To her people, Cleopatra was not just a monarch, but a living embodiment of Isis, the goddess of magic and healing. The story of her demise, believed to be involving the bite of a poisonous snake, has only heightened the drama surrounding her life and death. Yet the most profound mystery of all is the location of her final resting place. Despite centuries of effort, historians and archaeologists have scoured records and excavated sites, only to come up empty-handed over and over. Cleopatra's tomb, like the queen herself, seems to be veiled in the sands of the Western Desert. Born in 69 BC, during the days of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the Roman Republic's rise, Cleopatra ascended to the throne at 18, co-ruling with her younger brother. Her reign was marked by political intrigue and personal alliances that shaped the fate of empires. Her romances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, Rome's most powerful figures, were legendary. After her death, historical records claimed that Cleopatra and Antony were interred together. The quest to find their tomb has become an impossible task. Many archaeologists theorize that Cleopatra's grave lies somewhere beneath ancient Alexandria, now submerged beneath the Mediterranean Sea. Frank Gaudio, the same underwater archaeologist that explored the lost city of Taunus Heracleion, also dipped into these waters in the early 2000s, hoping to uncover clues towards the burial site's location. Though he did not find the queen's tomb, many believe the submerged ruins were perhaps buried under earth or sand due to earthquakes and sea encroachment. Despite this, hope endures. Since 2009, Kathleen Martinez, a criminal lawyer turned archaeologist, has devoted herself to the search for Cleopatra's tomb. Driven by her admiration for the queen, Martinez has challenged traditional beliefs, suggesting that Cleopatra was not buried in Alexandria, but rather at the Temple of Isis in Taposiris Magna, a site about 45 minutes west of Alexandria. Martinez's theory hinges on Cleopatra's desire to be interred alongside Antony in a manner that would fulfill the legend of Isis and Osiris, ensuring their eternal union. She suggests that Cleopatra negotiated with Octavian to ensure a burial in Egypt to reenact this mythological promise of immortality. Martinez's excavations at Taposiris Magna have uncovered remarkable finds, a treasure trove of relics, mummies, and artifacts. Most intriguing of all is a massive subterranean tunnel discovered beneath a temple, 6.5 feet tall and stretching 4,300 feet. Though this discovery does not yet confirm Cleopatra's tomb is there, it sparks hope that the queen's final resting place might soon be recovered. Number 3. Guanabara Bay Mystery. In 1982, in the waters off Guanabara Bay, near Rio de Janeiro, renowned maritime archaeologist Robert Marks stumbled upon what could be one of the most astonishing discoveries of his career: ancient Roman artifacts scattered across the seabed. This revelation suggested that Romans might have reached the New World long before Columbus or even the Vikings did. The tale begins with the discovery of amphorae, tall ceramic jars used by the Romans to transport goods like wine and oil. Known for his extensive underwater excavations, Marx was intrigued when he learned about these relics from a group of lobster divers in 1976. The divers had long reported seeing jars covered in barnacles on the ocean floor. Located about 15 miles from the coast and 100 feet deep, Guanabara Bay became the center of a sudden historical mystery. The amphorae were in pristine condition and unmistakably Roman. They spread across an area large enough to cover nearly 3 tennis courts. For many, this evidence hinted at an extraordinary possibility, that ancient Romans had ventured far beyond their known boundaries, all the way across the Atlantic. The discovery, however, was not without controversy. Robert Marx faced numerous hurdles, including bureaucratic roadblocks from Brazilian authorities that hindered his excavation efforts. This secrecy and obstruction fueled speculation and debate about the true origins of the artifacts. Some posited that the Roman amphorae were misplaced anomalies, while others suggested a more intriguing scenario, that these artifacts were remnants of an ancient shipwreck from Rome. Marx's findings were not without detractors. Critics accused Marx of embellishing his discoveries. They questioned his motives and suggested he was more interested in fame than in genuine historical research. Allegations of artifact theft further complicated the narrative. Marx's reputation was also called into question. But Marx's past work lent him credibility. He had previously unearthed relics from Columbus's era and even located Columbus's remains in Spain. His excavation at Guanabara Bay uncovered not just amphorae, but also a large 4,300-foot-long tunnel beneath the seabed, which he believed could be linked to the Roman shipwreck. He even dug with his hands through layers of mud in his dedication to proving the artifact's authenticity. The debate over the Guanabara Bay ruins continues. Could these amphorae indicate that ancient Romans traveled to the Americas centuries before Columbus? Or are they the product of a more mundane explanation? Until further evidence emerges, the world is waiting with bated breath. Number 2. The Indus Script. Winding through Pakistan and northwestern India, the Indus River served as the main waterway for the flourishing Indus Valley civilization between 2600 to 1900 BC. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa were remarkable for their advanced urban planning and sewer systems. They thrived long before Rome or Greece established their empires. With streets laid out in precise grids and the world's oldest known toilets, the civilization's achievements were unparalleled. Even more unparalleled was that despite their advancements, there were no signs of warfare, no weapons caches, no war art, no evidence of cities razed by conflict. This absence of war is baffling in a world of constant conflict. Yet amid their sophisticated infrastructure and apparent peace, even further mystery lay in what has become known as the Indus Script. Trade connections with Mesopotamia revealed that the Indus civilization was far from isolated. Artifacts from Harappa found in ancient Mesopotamian cities, such as Ur, suggest a widespread exchange of goods. But what remains most perplexing is not what they traded, but what they left behind. A script etched into seals, terracotta tablets, and metal objects. A script that cannot be deciphered. Marked by a blend of pictograms and symbols, the script poses 3 significant challenges to modern scholars. First, there's no known language to match the script. In other cases, such as Linear B and Mayan glyphs, connections to contemporary languages have provided crucial breakthroughs. Yet the Indus script's language has yet to be unlocked, and its unlocking is further complicated by political and academic disputes. Some scholars suggest a link to ancient Sanskrit, while others propose connections to the Dravidian languages of southern India. The lack of historical references within the script complicates the task further. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which mention figures like Pharaoh Ramses, the Indus inscriptions do not name leaders or events, making contextualization difficult. This absence of identifiable historical markers leaves researchers stabbing in the dark. Moreover, without a bilingual key akin to the Rosetta Stone, which was pivotal in decoding Egyptian hieroglyphs, progress has stalled. While the Rosetta Stone provided a bridge between Egyptian and Greek, no such tool has surfaced for the Indus script. Researchers hope that one might be found in the ruins of Mesopotamian cities that once traded with the Indus civilization. Since the 1920s, over 100 attempts have been made to crack the script. Initial efforts in 1982 proposed a Sanskrit-based system with 62 signs. This was later challenged by some, who estimated that the language contained around 425 signs. Most modern scholars now believe the script is not an alphabet or syllabary, but a logosyllabic system, a blend of symbols representing whole words or concepts alongside syllabic signs. Evidence suggests it might be written in a Proto-Dravidian language, with some signs potentially deciphered using Old Tamil. Thus far, less than 10% of Indus Valley sites have been excavated. As more sites come to the surface, perhaps the answers will emerge and reshape our understanding of one of humanity's earliest and most interesting civilizations. Number 1. The Vela Incident. On the morning of September 22, 1979, the US Vela 6911 satellite, designed to detect nuclear explosions, captured an anomaly, a double flash of light in the South Atlantic. The fleeting brilliance was characteristic of nuclear detonations, and this ignited a storm of concern within the US national security community. Was this a covert nuclear test violating the Limited Test Ban Treaty? If so, by whom? Or could it be a technical glitch, a celestial fluke, or something else entirely? US intelligence and military agencies scrambled to find out. Initial analysis pointed towards a potential low-yield nuclear explosion, possibly conducted by South Africa or Israel, or even a collaboration between the two. But as investigations deepened, this theory seemed unlikely. A high-level scientific panel, led by MIT's Jack Ruina, proposed an alternative explanation. The double flash might be the result of an unexplained phenomenon involving the satellite itself, like a meteoroid or other space debris. Despite the panel's findings leaning towards a non-nuclear cause, the debate persisted. The Ruina panel's conclusions became the semi-official stance. Yet this perspective was hotly contested by members of the intelligence and scientific communities. By late 1980, internal discord over the Vela incident was no longer a secret. But the data and reports were under lock and key, leaving the public and many within the government in the dark. Years rolled by, and information began to surface. Declassified documents revealed the CIA's assessment, which had deemed the likelihood of a nuclear test at over 90%. Additionally, the Naval Research Laboratory used its Global Hydroacoustic Sensor System to back up claims of a low-yield nuclear explosion. In 2010, President Jimmy Carter's diaries came to light, revealing his personal conviction that Israel had conducted a nuclear test near the southern tip of South Africa. Carter's beliefs seemed to align with preliminary reports, but conflicting views from other officials muddied the waters. In November 2019, the Woodrow Wilson Center hosted a crucial oral history conference, marking the 40th anniversary of the Vela incident. The conference brought together surviving key figures from the event, the only two remaining members of the Ruina panel, Richard Garwin and Richard Mueller, along with several former national security officials and scientists. The discussions revealed a complex maze of bureaucratic maneuvering and personal recollections. Former officials described the government channels through which the Vela signal was analyzed. Deputy National Security Advisor David Aaron and others recalled the initial suspicions that pointed towards a South African or Israeli test, though skepticism continues to linger about South Africa's nuclear capabilities at the time. John Dupree, a former national intelligence officer, revealed that his CIA report had heavily favored the possibility of South African involvement, although he later questioned the accuracy of this assessment. Meanwhile, former Undersecretary of Energy John Deutsch recounted fruitless efforts to find supporting evidence of a test, including delays in collecting fallout samples. The absence of conclusive proof left the truth in the dark. The panel discussions also revisited the Numic affair, with Jessica Matthews reflecting on how suspicions of Israeli involvement in the Vela incident were influenced by earlier investigations into the diversion of fissile materials from a US plant. Amid the revelations, lingering questions about political pressure from the Ruina panel emerged. While some defended the panel's integrity, others suggested subtle biases may have shaped its findings. The conference also touched on the enigmatic MIT Mafia, the close ties between key figures involved in the Vela investigation. As the conference concluded, the debate over the Vela incident remains inconclusive, with many documents still remaining classified. For now, the book has yet to be closed on this dark chapter in Cold War nuclear history.